The topic for this evening is impulsiveness. Yeah. A lot of people planned on coming tonight, and then suddenly they decide to do something else. And the problem with the topic when you're dealing with impulsive people, impulsiveness is a difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing. They did a famous study, psychological study, where they took children and they put a marshmallow in front of them and they said, you can eat that marshmallow right now, but if you wait 5 minutes, I'll give you another marshmallow. And they found that the people who waited the 5 minutes to get the second marshmallow, they followed them through life. They had more stable marriages and relationships. They were more successful in business, successful in everything. Because impulsiveness is unfortunately something that tears us apart, stops us from being successful. Now, my Rabbi Orlofsky, and a lot of people today say my Rabbi Orlofsky, but he was my Bekiyas Rebbe in Chavetz Chaim in 1975. So he was actually my Rebbe. He was the one who, when I had hepatitis, bullied me into using the pigeons. If you are not familiar with this is one of those great cultural experiences. I encourage you not to get hepatitis, but if you can find someone who's got it, to watch them, because it's a lot of fun. Yeah. I had very high hepatitis. My SGOTs and SGTPs, which are supposed to be around 50, were about 2,000. If I concentrated very hard, I could move my head from one side of the pillow to the other. And I was a wreck, you know. And Rabbi Orlofsky said to me, are you going to do the pigeons? And I said, excuse me. So he says, Tamam and Hagim. It says that if you have hepatitis, you get male pigeons for a male, female pigeons for a female, and you clean them out well, then place their bottom on your belly button, and it sucks out the poison. And I said, there is not a chance in God's good earth that I'm going to do that. There's just, on so many levels, that's just wrong. It's not going to happen. And Rabbi Orlofsky started screaming at me, and he said, you know, you have a refuah and you're not using it. You're going to be chayav on all the bittul Torah that you're doing. I was really not in a position to fight. I said, fine. I said, who does this? The Pigeon Man. I don't know who has it today. At the time, there was a man. I don't know. I forgot his name, but he was known as the Pigeon Man. They sent someone to the Arab Shuk. They were only able to find 8 pigeons because it wasn't the season. I didn't even know there was a season for pigeons. And they bring them back, and to cover the cost, I charged admission. A lot of people came in. It was very exciting. And he cleans them out, Baruch Hashem. And the first one died in 30 seconds. You know, the last one, it took almost a minute and a half. And he told me afterwards I could have killed the whole flock. Anyway, it wasn't very scientific because they should have done a blood test at the beginning, at the end. They did it once a week. But my next blood test, my SGOTs and SGTPs, went down from 2,000 to 200. The doctor called it a remarkable recovery. So I have Rabbi Orlofsky to thank for that story, and which has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But it's such a cool story. What do you do with that? You know, you got to work on it somehow. But he said to me once, he says, you're not a rabbi unless whatever you say, you tie into the parsha. So before we start, I have to tie it into the parsha, right? Impulsiveness. So I'm jumping ahead to Parshas Matos. The truth of the matter is, it's a parsha. It doesn't have to be this parsha. Parshas Matos, which I don't know if I should really say I'm jumping ahead or I'm jumping backwards, you know, because I think it's closer behind than it is here. Anyway, and it tells us the following story. Perek Lamed Beis Pasuk Aleph. Umikna Rav Hayel b'nei Reuven b'nei Gad Atzim Ma'od, etc., etc. And they come and they say, look, we got a lot of cows, and this is cow country. Pasuk Hey. V'yamru imotzanu chen be'einecha. If we have found favor in your eyes. Yutan es haaretz hazos li'avadech le'achuzah. Give us this land on Eva HaYarden as an inheritance. Al ta'avireinu es HaYarden. We will not pass over the Jordan. Okay, that's what they say. We'll take this. On this, the Yalkut Shimoni says the following. Quotes the famous pasuk. Chanoch lana al pi darko. Teach a child when he's young, and he will never forget it, even as he gets old. And it quotes a pasuk. And the pasuk it quotes is from this week's parsha. And the story goes like this. Bereshis, Perek Lamed, pasuk Yudalid. V'yelech Reuven mimei gzir chitim. And Reuven went out during the time of the wheat harvest. V'yimtza dudayim basada. And he found mandrakes growing in the field. V'yavo asema Leah imo. He brought it to Leah, his mother. V'tomer Rachel Leah tanina li midudai b'nech. Give me these dudayim, and the whole story with the dudayim take place. The pasuk is, it says, Chanoch lana al pi darko, vayelech Reuven b'nei ksir chitim. ... What's the connection? Reuven goes out and picks flowers for his mother because they were good, help you to be able to give birth. And says the Medrash, and that's why hundreds of years later, Shevet Reuven decides to give up Eretz Yisrael because they have a lot of cows and stay in Evar Yarden. What's the connection? So I heard from my Rabbi, Rav Moshe Chait, a fascinating insight. And one that, I heard this over 40 years ago. And it made such an impression on me. He said, Reuven is going out during Yemei Ktsir Chitim. You're going out to harvest the wheat. What's your job? I want to harvest the wheat. And I see these mandrakes by the side of the road. And I say, this would be great for my mom. And I pick the mandrakes and I bring them to my mom. Not a bad thing to do. But you had a mission. You were going out to harvest the wheat. What are you doing picking flowers? You had a job to do. That action multiplied over the generations to the point that when all of Shevet Reuven came to Evar HaYarden, they said, this is good enough, we'll take this. You haven't even seen Eretz Yisrael. You don't even know what's there. You gave up your chelik in Eretz Yisrael because you took the first thing you saw. When Yaakov is giving out the brachas, and these aren't what I would call brachas, brachas, like when you go to Chaim Kanievsky, bracha v'atzlacha. Bracha v'atzlacha. Should be successful. That's a good bracha. Now he's getting old, he's got too many people, he doesn't say that anymore. He goes, bua. Bracha v'atzlacha, Rosh Hashanah, bua. He has a lot of tzedakahs that he collects for. Somebody brought him a large sum of money, asked him for a bracha, so he says, bua. So he says, I brought the Rebbe a lot of money, I was looking for a longer bracha. So Chaim goes, bua. Bracha v'atzlacha, what else are you looking for? That's a bracha. So Yaakov gives his children brachas. Shimon and Levi, you guys have a serious anger problem. Reuven, pachas kamayim. Yeah? Now, that's not what I would call a bracha. But it's the best of bracha. Because it's only the person who cares about you the most who will tell you that there's a piece of toilet paper stuck to your foot when you're coming out of the bathroom. You understand? It's only your closest friends who will make an intervention. It's only the people who really care about you who are gonna tell you, listen, People who don't care about you say, it's fine. Fine, whatever you do. People who care about you? Yeah. This is something that unfortunately many children will never get today because I got this when I was growing up. If you were acting like an idiot, your Rebbe would say, stop acting like an idiot, and you did. But you can't do that today because you'll destroy someone's self-esteem. When I was going to school, they hadn't discovered self-esteem yet. They didn't know it existed. So if you act like an idiot, they would say, stop acting like an idiot, and you did. Today, you can't say that. You could say, maybe you'll be a little less of an idiot tomorrow. Maybe, It's very nice. You came to davening twice this week, and maybe next week you'll come 3 times. And by the time you're 60, you'll come every day, and it's very good. You build up, So we're afraid to tell people. We're afraid to point out when people have shortcomings. Yeah? It's a pity because, if nobody points out when you have a problem, there's no way for you to be able to solve it. I don't know if anybody. This is the problem. I just told a joke, earlier, about Sears. I said I better get these jokes in fast because it won't be around anymore. So, but there used to be these light bulb jokes. How many this does it take to change a light bulb? How many that to take to change a light bulb? Different jokes like that. They were ethnic jokes and totally inappropriate. And when they turn off the camera, I'll tell you. But no, just as a study to appreciate the history of humor. Anyway, so they used to have these light bulb jokes, and then eventually, of course, they got to the Jewish community. How many Jewish grandmothers does it take to change a light bulb? No, sit in the dark, that kind of thing, But they had one that I thought was profound. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but only if the light bulb wants to change. So if nobody wants to hear. In the old days, you used to pay someone to give you mussar. Because I need to hear the mussar. Now I'll grow. I'll become a better person. I want to hear it. Yeah. So he says to his son Reuven, "Pachaz kamayim." You are unstable as water. Now, we know that there are what are called the 4 yesodot. Yeah, the 4 yesodos. The 4 primal forces: earth, air, fire, and water. And there are different attributes that a person has that's coming from one of these primal matters, i.e., if you're angry, that's coming from fire. If you're lazy, that's coming from dirt. That's because you're dirt. And certain people are stronger in some of these things, and you can, those, who follow the zodiac. In Judaism, we had the mazalot. We had the idea of the zodiac. Certain signs are water signs, fire signs. You have a particular natiya. So you might know you have a tendency towards laziness or a tendency towards anger, Those of us who are a combination, Baruch Hashem, we manage to be lazy and angry and, we get all of it all in together, yeah? Water is what? That's the impulsiveness. That's the ability not to be able to think. I act, and I think about it later. That's impulsiveness. I'm not even considering it because pachas kamayim. Why is mayim? Because mayim has no shape. It has no, as we say, chomer. It has no chomer. Put it in a long, thin glass, it'll be long and thin. Put it in a low, shallow bowl, it'll be low and shallow. It takes on whatever form you put it in. It doesn't take any form of its own. It doesn't have any permanence. It's something that's, that's unstable. Pachas kamayim, he says to Reuven. Yaakov recognized this trait. And Rabbi Twain wanted to say that was the insight that he got from the Dudaim, from that medrash. You see already that Reuven. So the real source of this was Maisabilla, where he got angry and he did something without thinking that had cosmic consequences. But people do things. Now here's very interesting. When it comes to setting up the machane, so on the east goes Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun. On the west go the Bnei Rachel, Ephraim, Menashe, and Binyamin. In the north goes Dan, Naphtali, and Asher. In the south goes Reuven, Shimon, and Gad. And the Ramban, at the beginning of Bamidbar, explains why it was set up this way. And it says the best exposure is south. South will get the most sun. Yeah? East will get it in the morning, west will get it at night. North is the darkest exposure, and south is the best exposure to have. Bear this in mind when you're buying an apartment. Yeah, so it's Hashem. So the south is a place where it gets the most sun. And it says Reuven goes in the south because Reuven is Midas HaTshuva. He's Midas HaTshuva. Why? Because Midas HaTshuva is the result of somebody who's impulsive. Yeah? Mark Twain once said, "Keep your words soft and sweet. It'll be easier when you have to eat them later." It was an amazing thing. I remember reading this decades ago, and How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. He told the following story. He said, a little history for you. The Civil War ripped apart the United States. 1861, the South seceded, and the North said, no, you can't secede, and they had a war, civil war. And the South lost. But at terrible, terrible cost. Terrible cost. The Southerners had all the good generals. Lee was a master. They just didn't have enough materials to keep the war going. And in the Battle of the Wilderness, basically Grant wore them down with battle of attrition. But at the beginning of the war, the Confederates were winning one battle after another, and they finally reached the high water mark, which was in a little town called Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. They were actually going there to get shoes. There was a shoe factory. And they went to get shoes, and they met up with the Union Army, who weren't supposed to be there, and this was a battle that wasn't supposed to take place. 3 days, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. On July 4th, Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. But this battle was one of the worst battles of the whole Civil War. 50,000 casualties, people killed or wounded. It was devastating. And at the end of the war, at the end of the battle, Lee was basically beaten. And he was taking what was left of his army and retreating south, but it had rained, and the river was flooded, and he couldn't get across. If Meade, General Meade, had pulled together his army and chased General Lee, he would have defeated him, and that would have been the end of the Civil War. As it is, it went on for another 2 years, and tens of thousands of lives were lost. And Abraham Lincoln was very upset, and he wrote a very angry letter to General Meade. You could have ended this war. We wouldn't have had all this bloodshed. What a terrible thing would have happened. He says, history does not record General Meade's reaction to it because Abraham Lincoln never sent the letter. He had a policy whenever he wrote a letter to put it in his drawer and wait 48 hours and look at it again. And 48 hours later, he decided, I wasn't there. I don't know what Meade went through. Look at the losses that he suffered. Look how difficult it is. So it's easy for me to say, grab your army and go and chase him, but maybe they weren't in a shape to go and fight. Only after Lincoln was dead, they found this letter in his desk. He never sent it. I adopted that policy. I was running a Jewish organization. I would write a letter, and particularly if it was a harif letter, I would put it in my drawer, and I would wait 2 days before I sent it. But I often sent it, but at least I stopped and thought about it, Today, nobody stops and thinks. If you don't believe me, there's a man who's extremely powerful who has a Twitter account. And he shoots off whatever he wants. He's not the only one. There are any number of people whose careers have been destroyed by Twitter because you just send it out and you don't stop to think. And it's not only Twitter, it's email. You type anything on email, people don't even have time for punctuation and grammar, They put the letter R and the letter U, you know what I mean? It's like a E.E. Cummings poem, It's like, and they push the send button. And then afterwards you're left thinking, did I want to say that? Should I have said that? It's the perfect email, Twitter, these things, they're the perfect vehicle if you want to be impulsive. Because there's no wait time. Let me tell you something better, because most of us don't even appreciate this. Yeah. Until the 1960s, all pens were fountain pens. Fountain pens were already a big step forward. You took a quill, or you took, a metal pen, whatever it was, you dipped it in an inkwell, and you wrote with it. And then you had to blot it, because otherwise it would smear, etc. That's how you wrote. You know how long it took Lincoln just to even write that letter? And then he first put it in his drawer for 2 days? And we just sit down at the computer, we type it out, boom, it's done. It's out. And it's out there. Did we mean to say that? Do we want to say that? But we're impulsive. We're impulsive. We don't stop to think. I saw an Avreich, an Eretz Yisrael, fellow learning in Kollel, and I saw him just standing like this. I said to him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm thinking." I said, "About what?" He says, "That's not important." He says, "I watched these two old Talmidei Chachamim in my shul where I learn in Kollel. And one of them asked the other one a question, and they would just stop for 10 minutes, both of them, and think. They wouldn't even have to, they wouldn't say anything. They were thinking. They were thinking." I do question and answers, one of the programs that I do. And people are asking questions and forming the question as they're talking. And they start asking a question, and halfway through the question, they realize they don't even understand what their question is. Forget about my question. Forget about me answering it. In fact, I always teach people, I teach rabbis how to answer basic questions, and I tell them, here's the best phrase. What do you mean? Most time people have no idea what they mean. I was at a Shabbat Olami. Yavna Olami have what they call Shabbat Olami. It's Shabbos all around the world, particularly in college campuses. It's very big in Europe. The biggest one is in Leeds University. I remember this was 1995. Because Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs was supposed to be the scholar in residence at Leeds University. It was the largest event. And the Queen asked instead if he would go to the 50th anniversary of VE Day. Today was the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. That was the 50th anniversary of VE Day, victory in Europe. And so he canceled on Leeds University. So at the last minute, they were scrambling for somebody of that caliber. Luckily, I was available. And they called me up and they asked me, will you come to Leeds University? So I said, I thought the chief rabbi is supposed to come. So he says he canceled, to go with the Queen. I said, okay, give me a second. I have to call the Queen and send my apologies. I won't be able to make it, and I will come to Leeds instead. And I went to Leeds University. I remember by Shabbos lunch, a guy comes over to me and says, you know the chief rabbi was supposed to be here. And I said, yes, I know. He says, if the chief rabbi came, I wouldn't have come. And I said, why is that? He says, because the chief rabbi doesn't like progressive Jews, and I'm a progressive Jew. Now, here's another thing I teach people when it comes to answering questions. Only answer questions, not statements. When it's a statement, the correct response is, oh. So he says to me, he doesn't like progressive Jews. And I said, oh. And then he said, what do you think about progressive Jews? So I said, I don't know. I'm from America. We don't have progressive Jewry. Is it like Reform? No, it's not like Reform. Is it like conservative? No, it's not like conservative. What is it? It took us 10 minutes to come to several conclusions. One is, he doesn't know what progressive Judaism is. He knows he is a progressive Jew. He knows he doesn't like the chief rabbi because he doesn't like progressive Judaism, and he's going to start keeping Shabbos. I don't know exactly how we did that in 10 minutes, but he had already decided, even though he had no idea what he was talking about. Because people, I'm a professional speaker. I know it. I do this for a living, and there is some chachma to this. It's not just because I'm incredibly knowledgeable and charismatic. That too, but that's not the only thing. There's actually some chachma to it. And one of the things they teach you is you have the first 2 minutes to be able to convince the audience, this is fancy group dynamics talk, to sign a social contract with you, that we agree to be your audience and that you will be the speaker. Because I got 2 minutes, and if in 2 minutes I decide, oh, this guy's a waste of time, he's boring, he doesn't know anything, he's that, That's why many rabbis have this gift to be able to lose an audience in the first 2 minutes. It's a gift. They've mastered it, because they insist on telling a joke. And I'm talking about people who wouldn't know a joke if it bit them. You know what I mean? This rabbi says to me, I just told this joke and I didn't get a laugh and I can't figure out why. I said, tell me the joke. He tells me the joke and I said, you told it wrong. He says, well, how is it supposed to go? Here's how the joke is supposed to go. 3 people are on top of a building, and one of them says to the other one, these 2 buildings are so close together, they form an air pocket. And if you were to fall off, you wouldn't even fall because the air is so tight, it would carry you up. The second guy says, that's ridiculous. The first guy says, I'll show you. He jumps, he's falling, and whoosh, he comes back up. The second guy says, that's amazing. He jumps, he falls, he dies. The third guy says, you've got a sick sense of humor, Superman. That's the joke. The rabbi told the joke. Superman is on top of a building with 2 people. Why? Because maybe the person is worth listening to. Maybe it's worth listening to. Rav Hutner, I heard this from somebody who used to go to his shiurim. He used to give a shiur, and he gave it in a very small room, and he didn't use a microphone. It was hard to hear him, and you had to struggle. I heard this actually from Rabbi Meir Findel, who was the founder of Hank. And I said to somebody once, one of the organizers, why don't we move this into the auditorium? Give him a microphone, it'll be so much easier. He says, because Rav Hutner holds b'shita that you should work to hear the person who's speaking. It shouldn't be so easy. You have to sometimes struggle. There were people who were gedolim, who had speech impediments, who gave shiurim, and you had to struggle to understand what they were saying. It was hard to hear. But if you think that it's worthwhile, I'm willing to invest in it. But that's not how group dynamics works. You got 2 minutes for people to decide whether I should listen to you or not, and if not, And that's how you write a news story. The first paragraph, you have to put in all of that information in the first paragraph. Yeah? Or to quote the president, you've got 1 paragraph for fake news, and then all the way at the bottom, you might be able to tell the truth. You know what I'm saying? So it's an amazing thing. People decide. When I was going to school, I started going to school, they told teachers that they had to make their classes in 8-minute segments because kids could not concentrate for more than 8 minutes. Why? Because that was the time in between commercials. And people trained themselves to think in only 8-minute intervals. And you had to keep changing it every 8 minutes. Rabbi Dr. Gottlieb, Dovid Gottlieb, told me that when he used to go to South Africa, they didn't have television. They didn't allow in television. Yeah. He says you could not compare a South African student to an American student. They were so far ahead intellectually, able to concentrate. He says within a few years of introducing television, they went back to where they were. That's when there was television. Now, you know that you get a cable channel, you get a cable, 800 channels. You don't watch anything. You flip channels. So you're watching 3 movies, 2 TV shows, a sporting event and a Japanese cooking show, and you're going back and forth between them. That's why most kids can't concentrate at all. The number 1 answer to every question in high school is, what? Doesn't matter what you ask them. I'm sorry, what? I'm what? And sometimes you try to learn Gemara with people, try to learn something inside Chumash, whatever it is, and you see that their mind just they can't concentrate. I'm sorry, what were you saying? I'm sorry, I was thinking, and it's gone. So I remember reading this in the New York Times 20 years ago, that when they make commercials now, they have to make it with fast cuts because no one has patience to watch a whole commercial. It's got to be fast, going here, going there, now. People can't concentrate. We just take the next thing. Yeah. One of the many things that Chazak does is they make videos. But it's an art form to make a video to be able to catch people's attention right away because otherwise, forget it. Another click. I'll click off someplace else. Because to be able to stop and concentrate and think, is this what I should do or not? So the problem is clear. What is the solution? Now, the result is clear. The result is tshuva. Reuven becomes midas hatshuva. Why? Because if you're always messing up, then you have to keep apologizing, and you have to make up for what you did, and you have to fix the damage that you did, and you say something impulsively, you do something impulsively, and then you have to, because I remember seeing a sign once that was so brilliant. It says, how come there's never enough time to do something right, but there's always enough time to do it over? So, for example, you want to get something in the back of the refrigerator. Now, what did your mom teach you? Take out everything and put it down on the table or the counter. But nobody will listen to that. So you take out the chicken soup and you put it on the refrigerator door. You take the salad and you're holding it in this hand. You take the milk, you're holding it like this, and you're trying to reach for the thing, and it all falls. God help anyone who's in the room at that time. Why didn't you come and help me? Didn't you see? Because otherwise I have to stand up and say, now, why didn't you put everything down? I didn't have enough time. You have enough time now to clean it all up. You have enough time to fix it up, And people make impulsive decisions, and they don't realize, the consequences that are going to happen. And that's why you end up doing tshuva. You have no choice. You keep messing up. So how do we avoid this? So the Mesilas Yesharim has a section that he calls Zehiris. Now, one of the big problems with Mesilas Yesharim is that it is so difficult to translate. If you have the old translation, then Zehiris is watchfulness. I can honestly tell you that except for the old English translation of Mesilas Yesharim, I have never seen the word watchfulness ever. Not in print, not in conversation. Nobody ever told me, I really need to develop my sense of watchfulness. Nobody says that. So they came out with the new translation, and they call it vigilance, which is another word that nobody uses. It's an unused word. The only one I know who ever used it was Mad Eye Moody, constant vigilance, and it wasn't even him, it was Barty Crouch. Anyway, but otherwise nobody uses the word vigilance, yeah? So that's the problem. So I've always been looking for different translations of Zehiris, and finally, Baruch Hashem, psychology caught up to us. I have what I believe the best translation for Zehiris, mindfulness. Mindfulness means that you stop and think before you do something, and you appreciate it. It's exactly designed to defeat this, tendency to just do things without stopping to think. Yeah. So he defines what that means. What is Zehiris? First, don't do anything without thinking, whether or not this is right or wrong. That's it. Figure out, is this right? Is this wrong? Should I do it? Should I not? That is the definition of Zehiris. When he gets to how to do Zehiris, in Parag Gimel, he describes it for you. 2 steps with an A and a B. Yeah. Step number 1 is define true good and define true bad. First, you have definitions. You know how hard this is? It is the hardest part. People say to me, I want to be a good person. The most important thing is to be a good person. What's a good person? Someone who does good things. Like what? Doesn't kill, doesn't steal. That's not a good person. That's a person in a coma. You understand? Doesn't kill, doesn't steal. And that's only a good person? What if there's somebody on top of a building shooting down into the crowd? The only way to stop him is to kill him. Are you a bad person if you kill him? If the definition of a good person is someone who doesn't kill? It's tricky. What's a good person? I really want to have a good marriage. What is a good marriage? I'll know it when I see it, like fine art, I want my kids to turn out good. What are good kids? What are good kids? People don't even stop to think about it. We don't have any definitions. So when you sit down and you say what's good and what's bad, a person has to sit down and the devil's in the details. Or in this case, the angels. Yeah, you have to sit down and decide, what does that mean? What should I do in this situation or not? What is a good person? I wish I could tell you it was an easy thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do, and it's constantly defining it. Sometimes the decisions are easy. I have two things. I have a bran cookie and I have a ridiculously fatty, high sugar content dessert. Which one should I eat? Now, even though this should be an easy decision of good or bad, it's not. You see people at the Shabbos table when dessert comes around thinking, Sometimes they even say, I'll hate myself tomorrow. Why would you eat something that will fill you with self-loathing? Why? Because I don't want to think. I don't want to think. I look at that, and that piece of cake speaks to me with a voice. I will make you happier than you have ever been. And you think to yourself, well, a piece of cake wouldn't lie to me, must be true. And you eat it, and it's not the most delicious thing in the world. So you think, I didn't give it a chance. I have to eat more till I really get to appreciate it. And you see this all the time. I am diabetic, type 2 diabetic. Type 1 is where you're born with it. Type 2 is you work very hard to develop it. And it took me years. To develop it to its state that it's at today. Hashem. In case everybody ever says, did you ever accomplish anything with your life? Yes, I did. Anyway, so I know when I'm good, and my nutritionist always says you're not supposed to say good or bad, you know what I mean? But between me and you, you're either good or you're bad, yeah? When I'm good, and I'm not eating any of that stuff I'm not supposed to eat, people say, oh, would you like a piece of cake, And I said, is it worth dying for? I don't know if it's worth dying for. I mean, it's very good, it's like, And sometimes they say to me, yes, it's worth dying for. I said, well, then I have to taste it. And only once were they right. I would have died for that piece of cake. But anyway, actually, I'm sorry that it's not around anymore for the benefit of other people. But, the reason they went out of business, there was a bakery called Lowen's Bakery. They used to make cream puffs. This was a little bit of heaven that came down into earth. This was probably what the mun originally was, It was so soft, and the cream was so good, and you just put it in your mouth, and it disappeared. You didn't even have to chew it. It was gone. You could eat an entire box of them without even realizing it, No question that if Lowen's was still in business, I'd be dead today. There's no question about that. It was just unbelievable, But, you sit down and you say, is this good or is this bad? Should I do this? Should I not do this? And people have to, and if you don't have any definitions, how are you supposed to make a decision? So instead, we do how we feel. I feel like doing this. I feel like, why did you say that? I don't know. I just felt like saying it. Did you stop to think first if I should say it? Why did you do that? I don't know. I just felt like doing it. And then afterwards, you have to pick up the pieces. So it says Mesil Sharm, first thing is get your definitions. And this is for sure the hardest part. Or as somebody once said, the time to decide whether you trust a particular hashgacha is not when you're sitting in the restaurant. You should check it out beforehand. I went to a family simcha, and I went to the mashgiach, and I said, I eat only mahadrin. He says, well, the bread is mahadrin, and the dips are all mahadrin, and the salads, all mahadrin. I checked the vegetables, they're kush katif, and the salads you can eat. That's about it. I said, the fish? No. Chicken? No. Okay, fine. So I came to the simcha, and I washed, and I had dips, I had salad. The next table, I see Hasidim. They're eating the fish, they're eating the chicken. I said, I should have asked their rabbi. I went to the wrong guy. So at the end, I went over to them, and I said, wow, what did the mashgiach tell you? He goes, no, we saw you eating. I said, I only ate the dips and the salad because I spoke to the mashgiach. They go, oh, let's stay for dessert. But anyway, because I want to tell you about a scandal history. I'm going back to the 1980s, ancient times, before there was cell phones and internet, So there was a major scandal. One of the big hashgachas that everybody trusts, was giving hashgacha on vinegar that it turned out was no good. Why? Because, Kihil Sadas Yishurin, these guys don't know from anything. They check out everything themselves, and they found out that it was totally unreliable, even though everybody was using it. So they had the Vinegar Scandal. The OU set up a hotline and call up to see if there's vinegar, see what you can use, and a whole thing. And I remember talking to the mashgiach at Marina Del Rey that week. And he said, you know why the vinegar took place, the Vinegar Scandal? Because no one in America is hungry. They're starving. They're starving. A kid comes home from school, Mom, I'm starving. They throw open the refrigerator. It's packed. Things are falling out as you open the door. There's nothing to eat. I see one of my kids, there's nothing to eat. I said, why don't you make yourself microwave popcorn? Takes too long. I said, we used to just take a pan of oil and you had to put it in and it popped all over the kitchen, and you had to, Jiffy Pop, that was like a major technological advance, you know what I mean? Because they had a little piece of foil so it wouldn't bounce all over the place, Don't tell me about cavemen, Tell me about ancient times, But that's what it is today. Halitani no, pour it down my throat, I gotta have it. There was this product, I assume it's still around, called Cracker Jacks. Yeah? Candy-coated popcorn, peanuts, and a prize. Right? So they had a jingle. It says there are 4 types of Talmidim. One is a mishmeres. Mishmeres says all the wine drips out and only the dregs remain. That's for sure me. Any nonsense, I can remember it forever. So I remember the jingle. What do you want when you gotta eat something? And it's got to be sweet, and it's got to be a lot, and you got to have it now. I think that sums up a whole generation. It's got to be sweet, and it's got to be a lot, and I got to have it now. So people don't have patience. Don't take this the wrong way. Chas v'shalom for me to imply anything. I'm just bringing this as an example, right? I know people who have finished Shas with the Art Scroll Gemara, and I see that they have things underlined in the footnotes, etc. Right? But when I was going, we didn't have the Art Scroll Gemara. We had the Sansino. And it was easier to learn Aramaic than to figure out what the Sansino Gemara was saying, because half of it was Latin. You know what I mean? So then they would tell you, okay, get a Dijastro dictionary. There is not one word in the Gemara that's in Jastro. You know what I'm saying? Unless you know how to conjugate Aramaic, in which case, frankly, I don't need your dictionary if I could conjugate it. You know what I mean? So, you're sitting here looking things up. It was very difficult to be able to learn how to, and I'll be perfectly honest. Sometimes as I got to something, I look it up in the Art Scroll Gemara. You can't stop. You just look up one thing and you're turning the page, Ahmed Bays, turning the page, and it's just so user-friendly, Gemara was never user-friendly, I still resent the fact that my Talmidim have the Divrei Mascha and Rashi in bold, you know what I mean? We had to try to search it on the page, because we make things so easy, because people don't have patience. I don't have patience to work at it. To do something good takes effort, takes time. When I went to Eretz Yisrael, if you wanted to be in contact with your parents, so you wrote them a letter. Yeah? Took 2 weeks to get there, 2 weeks for you to get an answer. When you read the answer, you don't even remember what they were responding to. It was a month later. Gave you a chance to develop independence. Now people go to Israel, they call or text their parents 3 times a day. And if they don't answer right away, they write them back in capitals. That's really bad. Why aren't you answering me? I was like, there's this immediacy. I have to know now. In The Fire Within, the book about Musa, so he tells the story how he took his Talmidim to Rav Brook, who was a famous Baal Musa, and he gave a Sichat Musar. And at the end, he said, any questions? And someone asked a question. He said, very good question. Any other questions? 2 or 3 other questions. And he goes, no, not every question has an answer. And they were like, okay, that's cute. What's the answer? And he just sat there until they realized, that was it. And they were so upset. Why wouldn't he answer our questions? And he realized he was trying to teach them a lesson. There's a question, there's an answer. There's a question and an answer. And there's no time to think about our questions. Yeah, there's no time to chat. I once heard of Dovid Gottlieb, he was in the middle of a class, and someone asked him something about the Holocaust, and I saw him do this more than once. He'd say, I will not abuse the memory of the 6 million Jews who were killed by making the Holocaust a throwaway question. Oh, by the way, Moshe Shapiro used to tell the story. I heard it from him twice, but he used to tell it all the time. He says, I was walking down the block, and someone came to me and said, could I share your umbrella to the end of the block? He said, sure. And as we're walking, he said, why was there a Holocaust? I said, I don't know. And when he told us over in Shur, he says, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it from here to the end of the block, if that's as much time as you're giving me. But people want the answer fast. They want it now. Nobody wants to work at something. Nobody wants to do it. So first I need my definitions. What's good and what's bad? And then it says, in every action you do, stop and think. Stop and think. Does this fit into my definitions of good or bad? Just stop and think. Take a moment to think. People say to me, oh, then you'll become obsessive. No, just don't do things automatically without thinking. I had a Rebbe who once said to me, everyone has a purpose in this world. Yours is to be a bad example. And I've tried to live up to that, I can't speak for anybody else, but I'll tell you that there are mornings where I make myself a cup of coffee, and at some point I look at the cup and it's empty, and I don't remember drinking it. Well, I must have drunk it at some point, but I just don't even remember it because I'm so mindless. Because people just do things without thinking why I'm doing it, So you do an action. Now, I brought an example. I went to camp in Israel, and whenever there's a tiyul, by law, you have to have one of these enormously large boxes of tasteless cookies. They come in 4 shapes. They're all the same. They taste like nothing. You bite into them, they turn into powder in your mouth. They're terrible. The only thing known to man that can wash it down is petal. Yeah? So that's why the Israelis have the petal, just to get those cookies down, Anyway, a person walks around with a big box of cookies and says to everybody, want a cookie? Sure. Sure. Some of them take a handful because it's for free. You know what I mean? They cookies. The guy comes to me, says, you want a cookie? I said, no. He did not even have the tools to deal with that response. He paused, and he said again, want a cookie? And I said, no. And he says, everybody takes a cookie. I said, I don't like them. They're tasteless. They turn into powder in your mouth. I choke on them. They're terrible. And as I'm saying this, the people around me are all nodding. Yeah, he's right. And the guy says, all right, turns to the next person. Want a cookie? Sure. And they all took cookies. Because I should stop and think. That means all it's saying is before you do something, stop and think, should I do this or not? Maybe it's something, simple. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. Sometimes you'll be surprised by your own response. It was one summer when I got up in the morning and somebody was asking me something, and I said, I can't talk to you once. I can't talk to you yet. I haven't had a coffee. And I can't function in the morning without a coffee. And I thought about that, and I said, I don't like the way that sounds. Because sometimes you'll find yourself in situations in life where there are no coffee. There's no coffee. What are you supposed to do now? So I knew this guy who used to come to my Shabbatonim. He was a Rav. He would take coffee and cold water, spin it around with his finger and drink it down, because he had to have coffee. So I said, I didn't like the way that sounds. So my Kabbalah I took in Elul is, I'm not drinking any coffee until after Sukkot. I actually went a little longer, because I like the idea of saying, if I want a cup of coffee, I'll have it, but I have to have a cup of coffee. I can't function without a cup of coffee. But we don't even realize what we say. We say things without even realizing it. Good morning. What's good about it? We don't even stop to think. I had a heart attack and a bypass operation. Two doctors told me I was supposed to be dead. Kinira, they were wrong. I met many people. It'll be 4 years this January. I met many people who said, we davened for you. I said, it worked because I'm still here, and the doctor said I shouldn't be, But at the end of that year, before Rosh Hashanah, someone says to me, so what do you want this year? I said, just a better year than this past year. And they said to me, and great. 2 doctors said you were supposed to be dead, and God miraculously kept you alive, and all you could do is complain? I said, you're right. I want a year just like this year. But we don't even stop to think. We just say things and do things, and then we suddenly find ourselves in situations which, is this what I really want? Is this who I want to be? Is this where I want to go? So he says there's 2 things you have to do. The first one is you have to define what's good and what's bad. The second thing is you have to decide, and that's broken into two parts. One is b'shas ma'isa. Right now I have to make a decision. Right now I have to make a decision. And then shalom b'shas ma'isa is I look over my entire day and I say, my sum total of decisions, did that get me where I wanted to go? Even though I justified why I did each thing along the way, at the end of the day, did I accomplish what I wanted to accomplish? Or did I not accomplish what I wanted to accomplish? So I had something I really had to do today, but I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and everything led me away. It pulled me away. You know, you end up not accomplishing what you wanted to do. The sum total of your decisions didn't take you where you want to be, didn't make you the person you want to be. Koveya itim l'Torah means I block in the time for Torah learning, because otherwise, kisha efna eshna, you know, when I have time, I'll learn. Maybe I won't. Because events control us. We let events control us. We decide. Let's face it, most people don't live the life they want. They live the life that happens. And they make one decision, and another decision, and another decision, and at some point they end up someplace. But is this where you wanted to be? Now, most people never even thought about it. They don't know where they want to go. Most people don't know what their meaningful life would have been. As one person said to me so painfully, I don't know what a meaningful life is, but this isn't it. Because I didn't live the life I wanted, I lived the life that happened. I chose, and I chose, and I chose, and I just ended up someplace. And to be able to sit down and think, is this what I want? Should I do this? So the practice that we have to incorporate is, before I do anything, stop just for a few seconds and think, do I want to do this? Do I want to go there? Should I go there? Is this what I want? And if we think it's esoteric, it doesn't make a difference, lamala v'lamharit, so whatever, So I give the example, you go to a wedding, they offer you schnitzel, they offer you roast chicken, and they offer you turkey, and they offer you salmon. So you look at it and you say, well, the turkey's in a sweet glaze, probably not so good because of the sugar. The schnitzel's fried, oil, probably not so good. The chicken's not bad, it's roast chicken. The fish is probably okay. So I could choose either one of those two. Which one? I don't care which one you choose, but at least you stop to think about it. You didn't just take the first thing that came along. I was by this family for Shabbos. Now, Baruch Hashem, I have been practicing this in my own life. Because if I ate the first thing that came along, what would I do for the next 12 things that they brought out? You understand? More and more dishes and more dishes and more dishes, you know what I mean? And each thing, I don't know how it works by all communities, but Syrians are very emotional. This is a custom. You have to eat this. This is called something in Arabic. This is called something in Syrian. You have to eat this. Yes, sir, I said. I have to do my duty to my people. You understand? Now that I know I'm part of the Spanish-Portuguese community. You understand? But if you just take the first thing that comes along, you don't stop to think, what's going to come next? What's going to happen? Where's it going to be? We are impulsive. I knew a friend who was from England, and England's different today, but I remember when I first started going there 30 years ago, it was like a small out-of-town community. There was a few kosher shops. There was very little there kosher. So he says he would fly around the country, and anytime he would find a kosher shop, he would stop in and eat, because he didn't know the next time he'd have it. And one time his company sent him to the 5 towns. And he walks down Central Avenue. And he says, oh, a kosher shop. And he stops and eats something. And 2 stores later, he says, oh, a kosher shop. And he stops and eats something. He says, by the end of the block, I was sick. You understand? Because, who could anticipate this? Who could anticipate this? Who knows what's going to happen? If you stop and think it out, as opposed to just doing the next thing. Taking the next thing. You ever see people go out to a fancy restaurant and they're waiting for their steak or they're waiting for the dish and they're hungry, so they fill up on the dinner rolls and they can't eat anything else? And that became I'm stuffed now. What am I supposed to do? But you didn't stop and think, like the little kid with the marshmallows. Maybe I'll have a better life if I wait. Let's see what happens. Let's anticipate a little bit. People don't know how to anticipate. We know how to wait. So impulsiveness is for sure going to make us the person we don't want to be. We're going to have the life that happens. We're just going to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And oftentimes, it'll be the opposite of what we want. Not only not what we want, the exact opposite of what we want. And that leads to tshuva. Because we have charata. We feel bad. We stopped and thought about it. And it becomes part of your personality. So you're going off to harvest the wheat, and I see flowers for my mother. That's nice. Harvest the wheat, get the flowers on the way back. Remember where you're going. Remember what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm not talking about people who are in my age group. Yeah, I thought I was the only one, but I mean many people in my age group. They walk into a room and they say, why am I here? You open the refrigerator and you say, I know I was looking for something. You know, and your memory just goes. Most of the people that you know in your life, their name is the guy with the thing, you know, it's great. Whenever you try to tell a story, it turns into a game of charades, you know what I mean? Because, yeah, I'm not thinking about that. I'm talking about where you stop and think, do I want to do this or not? There's nothing sadder than people who look back at a life that happened. Yeah? We have an opportunity to stop and think, define, what's the best I could be? And then it doesn't matter how much time it takes or how much effort it takes to make that happen. You're going to make that happen. Because I don't want my life just to happen. I'm not going to just take the next thing that comes along. I'm going to think, what's the best that I can do? And how do I get there? You want to play the piano? It takes a lot of time. You want to play a CD? It goes very fast. Stick it in the machine, music will come out. But if you want to master that, that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort. And anything good takes a lot of effort. You know? And anything, I remember seeing a quote once, it said, anything not worth doing is not worth doing well. You know? It doesn't make a difference anyway, who cares? You know? But a person who has the ability to stop and think and work at it and develop, then we can become the people we want to be and live the lives we want to be. Pachas kamayim, unstable. We make decisions just off the cuff. And then afterwards, we have to face the consequences of those decisions. And if we master what we call zihiris, which I would call mindfulness, of getting definitions of what the best life is that you can lead and taking the steps to fulfilling it, then at the end we can look back and say, I lived the life that I wanted and not the life that happened. Thank you very much.